Hallo Leute, willkommen zurück to my YouTube channel, and today is going to be another video that I'm making about languages because I haven't made one for a while, so I thought I would. This is going to be, by the title of this video, you can probably already tell what it is, but I'm going to say about what it is anyway, is how I learned languages young and then as an adult, and also I have some bonus tips for language learners who are new to learning languages or just in general. So we're gonna get started. So how old was I when I started learning languages? It was kind of a weird story about that because I feel like I didn't cover that too much, but now that I'm thinking and looking back on it more, I realized that I actually started learning Spanish probably about the age of 6 because I would hear it all the time. And of course, Sesame Street was a thing when I was a little kid. I've got younger siblings and they'd always watch Sesame Street, and so I would always hear it from there. And then of course there'd be people around me, like my peers and friends of mine who knew Spanish and, you know, had older siblings that lived with them because my older siblings didn't live with me and nor did they take Spanish, they took French. And also I had babysitters that taught me it too. So I had a lot of different ways of learning it on how I learned it and who taught me. So it was basically a lot of older kids and also friends of mine that knew Spanish too, just from their older siblings, because my older siblings didn't take Spanish, and I was like, oh, Spanish, yay! Now I really hate the language. And the resources that I used, I didn't use much. Pretty much what I just mentioned was that I used people that already knew Spanish, people that watched a lot of Sesame Street, because for some reason I felt that that was the knowledge that I needed back then. But then I realized that, well, I mean, I have only like a couple of resources to really learn Spanish. But I would also there were times in elementary school where we would read books with Spanish translation, to read things in Spanish. And then also I grew up watching Dragon Tales, which was a kid's show for those who don't know what that is. But it was always so cool to me because it was Spanish, it was exotic, it was cool. And that's kind of like what got me into languages. I mean, that learning Spanish even at that young of an age, which is kind of weird because now it holds a special place in my heart, even though that I don't like Spanish that much anymore. But I still have a massive respect for people who are, you know, native Spanish. Respect for any culture, really. It's so weird that, like, I look back on things that I remember from Spanish and I'm like, wow, I really have been speaking this language for a lot of my life. So, and I also, was in high school. Of course, I took Spanish classes in high school as well as French, but I dropped after a year because the French teacher was a psychopath. But more on that in a different video. But I would learn Spanish in high school, as a lot of American teenagers do in high school, as either learn Spanish or French, or, you know, if they're lucky, they learn other languages. But at the time, of course. So now as an adult, I use a lot more resources. Resources, for those who don't know, are things that you can use to help you with something. So, for example, a resource for me when it comes to the languages that I speak is native speakers. They're a resource, but they're also a person, but they're a really good resource that I highly recommend. And also things like books, music, media of any sort, like even podcasts I'd recommend. Books, I think I already said that, but books, things that can help you grow, but also can help you learn, which is kind of the same thing, but you know what I mean. So yeah, and as an adult now, I definitely use more resources. I rely also on YouTube videos every so often. I do watch a YouTuber on YouTube that is really good, that's actually a native Russian speaker, and you can tell by his voice. And he makes really good videos. I think it's called Be Fluent in Russian on YouTube. I'm going to put the title there and then also link his channel down below, because Fedor is a really great resource too, because he actually has experience learning English, as well as you can learn a lot. I mean, you can learn slang terms in really any language on YouTube. I mean, I've learned slang terms in Italian. I've learned slang terms in French. I've learned a lot of different things in different languages, even like British slang. But of course, I grew up on that end. But then, do I recommend language apps? I do, because I do also use language apps for my resources. I am a little bit, I do have a review on Duolingo on my YouTube channel that if you guys want to watch it, you can. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. I do have other apps that I can do a review on. I've basically been around the block when it comes to language apps because I started online with Live Mocha and BUSUU. I can't remember how to pronounce that. I think it's Busu or Busu, something like that. And I think both of those resources are still there. I used to use Italian Pod 101. Of course, that's kind of how I got my start, was with Pod 101. Usually it would be French Pod 101, Italian Pod 101. They have them for so many different languages. Hebrew Pod 101. I did speak Hebrew for a bit and then dropped it. And I'm actually thinking about picking it back up again. But, like, those Pod 101 classes. But they're very deceiving because of the fact that on their ads and their videos, they mention that it's a free app, a free resource, when it's really not. You actually have to pay for it. So those of you who are considering using the Pod 101 apps, be wary that you are going to be paying for them too, which I have used. I usually use their videos on YouTube, which is what I've been using since 11 years ago when I started learning Italian. But I would highly recommend using different apps and different websites, especially the ones that are reliable. Of course, what's a reliable source? I could get into that in another video when it comes to language learning, but anything like that I would highly recommend. Granted, Duolingo is not for everybody. It's definitely for me. I still use it every so often. It's an okay resource for a few things, but I use Mango Languages. I use even Google Translate, but I don't use that for French, and I'm going to talk about that in another video, why I don't use Google Translate for French. Anyway, actually right now I got 5 tips. The number one thing that I highly recommend is to find someone, whether that be in your real life or in your internet life, who is a native speaker. When I first learned languages, I didn't feel like I had a lot of resources when it came to native speakers because I felt like I was constantly not really reliant on, I couldn't even rely on native speakers because technology was so different 11 years ago. I mean, it wasn't so different, but it was different enough to where I didn't feel like I had the resources because I was a teenager. I didn't want to pay for someone to teach me languages or anything like that. But finding someone who's a native speaker and who's willing to give you pointers and teach you anything like that. But I would highly recommend just a native speaker in Spanish, in Italian, any languages that you want to learn. There is an app called Talkie where they connect you with people learning the languages. I think they also have native speakers. I don't use the app, but it's a resource, nevertheless. I'm going to also link below Lena Vasquez's YouTube channel because she is a fellow friend of mine who makes videos here, who I actually am in a group with, the LVL Mastermind community. I would highly recommend her channel and also just her content as well because she's got a lot more cultural experience, a lot more experience in general with languages than I do. And another one that I'd highly recommend that I did mention before is to use multiple resources and also films. Watch many different films on Netflix, on streaming services. I cannot tell you how many films I've watched on streaming services, even though that I have been speaking French for years, that I have been speaking Italian for years. I can't remember all the names of the films that I've watched, but I would highly recommend streaming services for your viewing pleasure when it comes to movies. Unfortunately, at least on my side of the world that I'm on, I could not find Russian films. I don't know if it's because of our whole Cold War thing, even though there's no Cold War going on right now, or, the Soviet thing. I don't know exactly why that is, but I've been wanting to find Russian films, but I just can't find the right places for that because it would actually really help me a little bit more. I've tried Netflix and it just doesn't have it. I don't know if we're still in that weird phobia stage still of Russia, but I'm not, so that's that. But also another tip that I've got is to speak as much as you can, even if those around you don't speak the language. I speak Russian to my family all the time. What I can say besides that is that just be sure to translate after you say it, because people get annoyed. I've even asked people, if I were to speak German to you right now and not translate, would you be pissed off? 9 times out of 10, they say yes. So I highly recommend just, if you want to speak languages that nobody around you speaks, to translate after, or if they just get annoyed by you speaking languages, like at this point, family members of mine are already annoyed enough with me speaking German and like a mixture of different languages, because I do it all the time. It's just, if I get angry, I speak German. I don't know why, I just do. But another thing that I'd recommend that I've also mentioned before is to use podcasts and also to purchase a book in your target language. This is kind of another bonus tip. It's kind of like tip number 6. But get a book in your target language. It can be a book that you've already read, or a book that you want to read that's in a different language. I purchased a book called La Gloire de mon Père. I'm going to say that again. La Gloire de mon Père. And that is by Marcel Pagnol. And that is a really good one to start with because it is a very easy book to read if you want to learn French or if your target language is French. I highly recommend that one. I have heard of people getting a book and getting their favorite book in that target language that they speak because it helps them. Do whatever helps you in that sense, because I have not yet tried that. Of course, I do have a lot of favorite books. I could order things, but in the languages that I speak, I feel like I don't see them a lot, or maybe I'm just looking in the wrong places. But I don't have anything that's in a different language that I frequently read. But also one thing that I want to recommend, this kind of goes in the media sense of things, but watching a movie in your target language throughout your language learning journey. I'm going to tell you one thing that not a lot of people tell me when it comes to movies, is that they are really good when you understand them. Of course, everybody knows that, when you understand them, even if they're in a different language. But what I'd also recommend is if you have an iTunes copy or a digital copy that's not Netflix, because Netflix doesn't let you turn off the subtitles, turn off your subtitles even if it's hard. Like, after the first time you watch it, leave the subtitles on. Second time you watch it, turn off the subtitles, because it'll help you so much more to understand it. But also watching it throughout your journey. The amount of times that I have seen Gebiete, which is wetlands in English, the amount of times that I've seen that movie, granted, actually is one of my favorite German films that I've seen, besides Lieber Mich and Dancing Quietly. But those films were actually like really good. I watched those on Netflix, but then they got discontinued off of Netflix, so I bought them on iTunes so I could watch them on my phone and also on my smart device. So that's all for the tips and for this video, you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and also give a thumbs up. All right. I will see you guys later. Until next time, bye guys.